know, Shakespeare didn't write plays because he loved theater. Shakespeare wrote plays because he said, what kind of country do we have? And what kind of country do we want to have? Could we talk about that? Can we find language to talk about what we're hoping for? And also to try and say, why isn't that happening? Why are all the things that we're hoping for, why do they keep not happening? And why do things that we never wanted to happen keep happening all the time? What is that about human beings, about human nature, about political structures, about power, about men and women, about love, but what's inside of love? Jealousy, humiliation, strange inequalities, strange suspicion. What happens in a relationship when you lose trust? What happens between countries when you lose trust? What does it mean that divided territory is Palestine and Cyprus and the human heart? What does it mean when you're erecting barbed wire through your own life? What does it mean when you're putting in place guard towers and minefields in a human relationship? And an economic blockade is between a man and a woman, let alone between one country and another. What are all the things that two people who were that deeply in love told each other? What information are they responding to and reacting to? And when you know that the President of the United States gets a briefing card every day that is this big, what didn't fit on that card? What did somebody say, oh, the President doesn't need to know that? And very important decisions are made on the basis of very partial information in a human relationship and between nations. I think what happens with any classic is people read it too much and assume they already know the story. And so you read it with the story you already know in mind, and you get that story back. And I think for me, one of the most important things with a classical text that's too well known is to really go at it and say, I don't know what the story is. Let me just look at it really carefully, not deciding in advance what the story would be, and try and find what the story is. And also to say that Shakespeare doesn't work like a children's book author, you know, telling you a nice story in a certain arc. Shakespeare works like Alfred Hitchcock. Shakespeare's trying to fool you. Shakespeare's being deliberately deceptive. Shakespeare is deliberately not telling you certain things and have you discover them only way too late after you yourself have drawn the wrong conclusions. And Shakespeare's one of the most extraordinary things about Shakespeare is Act 4 and Act 5, because we've been through enough play, we can wind this thing up. And Shakespeare says, no, I'm going to now begin a whole new set of revelations. And everything you thought for 3 acts will turn out not to be true. And so what happens is so often people read Shakespeare as the setup in Act 1 as that's the story, rather than read it retrospectively, is backwards from Act 4 and 5. And so if you read Act 4 and 5 first, and then go back to Act 1, you can see that a lot of Act 1 is actually disinformation, and is actually the thing you were using as your foundation was actually deliberately placed to throw you off the scent, just like a Hitchcock movie. And so you find these little hints, just like a Hitchcock movie, are placed there very strategically. It's not that Shakespeare kind of got tired that night and wrote that sentence by accident that created this implication. Is Shakespeare was planning a depth charge, and he deliberately needs to seed that right there. And of course, when in Act 4, Emilia actually confesses to the other woman that she is having an affair, we realize, oh my God, we have wrongly estimated all of these relationships. And like a lot of human affairs, somebody's been having something going on the side that you never suspected. Or you suspected it and you said, nah. And in fact, it's real. And it's happening and people are doing it. And so for me, one of the most interesting things about Shakespeare is not just what happens on stage, but what happens off stage. What he doesn't show you. And as you know, one of the coolest things about Shakespeare is he is about the fact that the world is deceptive. If you judge the world by the surface, you are getting it so wrong. This world of surfaces is deliberately a world of illusions. And you need to look much more deeply into every human being, into every political system, into every speech a senator gives, and you say, oh, there's a reality behind that reality. If you just buy that reality of that speech that that senator just gave, you're not getting what people got to him before he said that, and why this is the reality that he's claiming. And Shakespeare makes you show everybody's claiming a reality at a certain moment for a certain reason. But what's really going on may be something else. The other thing Shakespeare's trying to do is make you aware that the world is poetry. The world is not facts. My fact is your fiction. Or the bizarre thing is we construct facts out of a lot of fiction. And the mythology is what's constantly at work. We all have signs and symbols of everything. And we all read an event on tonight's news in our way to tell us what we wanted to tell. And in fact, that event probably means a whole bunch of other things to somebody else. And yet, we're busy saying that's a fact. And of course, it's our myth that we seized and made into a fact for our purposes. Shakespeare constantly shows you that, so you need to read at least, always a double-edged sword, is you have to distrust what you're reading and say, well, this character is claiming that. For what reason would this character claim that? Rather than just treat that as a statement. And you have to say, what did this character fail to mention? What is not in that speech? In addition to what is in it. And you start reading in this double-edged way. And again, it's just like with a human being. When you're trying to get to who did what to whom, you have to listen. Deep listening. And you have to say, wishful thinking, self-justification. What's going on here? And Shakespeare, and the other thing is, it's detective work, but it's also poetry. It's also going into a deeper emotion that this line is carrying with it of somebody's ruined hope.